What matters most to you when you're picking a new smartphone? Is it the camera, the battery, or is it the form factor or how you interact with the phone? In this video, I want to compare the brand new iPhone 15 Pro or the Pro Max to the Galaxy S23 Ultra. Over the last few days, I have gotten questions regarding the heat management, the battery capacity, and if the camera from the 15 Pro is an improvement from the 14 Pro or is it just the same? My name is KJOS and this is where I break down tech into simple terms. Let's dive into the performance with the new A17 Pro against the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. It is still early days, but the A17 Pro is a hit or miss, and most of the time it has to do with iOS 17. On paper, the A17 Pro is supposed to be the most powerful chip that Apple has ever produced for a smartphone, and I mean, yeah, they're kind of correct. But with iOS 17, I have had a lot of lags every now and then. For example, with the camera app or even the calculator app, it becomes unresponsive. To get my phone working again, I'll either need to lock and unlock the phone or close the app from the task menu. Apple did roll out 2 updates, iOS 17.0.2 since its launch, and this just feels like iOS 16 all over again. Now, if you're not familiar, iOS 16 was a buggy mess during launch, and quite frankly, over its 1-year span. Now, apart from these issues that come up during my day, I can say the average consumer will be glad with this performance. It is quite similar to the A16 Bionic chip if I'm being honest. Now, where it differs is with mobile gaming. First things first, I have been seeing comments about heating issues with the 15 Pro and the Pro Max, and I can confirm they're not so far off. I also want to preface this by saying I'm not really into mobile gaming, so my experience may be different from yours. I usually play FPS games like Call of Duty for example, so that was my natural choice. I made sure both phones had the highest settings so it'll be equal. So after about 15 to 30 minutes of playing Call of Duty, both the S23 Ultra and the 15 Pro got hot. More on the iPhone 15 Pro than the S23 Ultra, especially around the cameras. It's not hot where it's unbearable, it's just very noticeable. It was more of an annoyance than anything else. Again, my experience may be different and it doesn't in any way invalidate creators or people that have reported this issue. It could be that the titanium is not the best conduit for heat. It could also be the A17 Pro is taking a lot more power than usual. If you remember, the Galaxy 8 Gen 1 chip had this issue with the Galaxy S22 Ultra if I'm not mistaken. One thing to point out, heat management affects how the smartphone manages the battery capacity, and the iPhone 15 Pro's battery is not the best, at least in relation to the 14 Pro and even the 13 Pro if we start comparing. I'm not sure what it is, but I don't think the Pro iPhones have had good battery since the 13 Pro. I get about 6 to 8 hours of screen on time, but those are days I'm just really at home and not really doing anything. Now, the times where I'm really on my phone, like today for example, it was 38% at 2 p.m. If you do use your phone for things outside calling, texting, or FaceTime, then the S23 Ultra is a better fit for many reasons. For one, it is an all-day battery life and not just for marketing purposes, and for some people, it is a 2-day phone. Now, even with its heat, it does not throttle or sacrifice a huge chunk of the battery while playing games, recording videos, or taking pictures. You can easily get 9 hours of screen time with this, even if you use this to edit with the S Pen and other things. And speaking of recording videos, let us talk about the cameras. This has been a recurring question in my YouTube comments and my Twitter, which has the better camera. Like I always say, pictures are mostly based on preference, you know, how bright the picture is or the saturation amongst other things. The selfie camera for both phones are great, but when you look closely, you notice 2 things. One, the 15 Pro makes my skin darker while the S23 Ultra has more saturation. This really boils down to its software and how it interprets darker skin. Now, from my personal view, the iPhone 15 Pro is the closest thing to what my skin actually looks like. Now, while it may be darker, the S23 Ultra makes me look orange. I don't really like both, but when choosing the lesser of 2 evils, I would definitely go with the 15 Pro. The wide-angle lens on the iPhone shoots from 3 focal lengths: 24, 28, and 35. It is great to have those options, but for the sake of comparison, I shot both using the 24mm focal length. Shots of the sky and the trees and other general objects in your daily life will look a lot more colorful and punchier on the S23 Ultra. When zoomed in to the max, the S23 Ultra had more detail on the trees, but when you look at the house right next to it, the iPhone captured much more detail than the S23 Ultra. Same thing with all the shots. Now I will say the saturation does look nice when you are shooting the sky. It really just comes down to preference at the end of the day. When it comes to video, I shot this in ProRes log format, 4K at 30 frames per second, and the S23 Ultra in 8K footage. With ProRes log, this allows you to capture much more detail as well as dictate the type of footage you want in terms of color and the overall vibe. Now, even though the S23 Ultra shoots in 8K, the 15 Pro is still ahead in terms of detail, color balance, and especially dynamic range. Now, just a quick tip, if you do want to shoot in ProRes log in 4K, you can easily attach a memory card to your iPhone with a memory card reader, and it bypasses the 1080p limitation. Okay, let's talk about the display and the form factor. The display of the 15 Pro and the S23 Ultra are amazing. It is also safe to say that Apple did not really upgrade the display, so this is really on par with the 14 Pro or the 14 Pro Max. You know, the 2000 nits of max brightness, an LTPO panel, and a 120Hz refresh rate. All that jazz. The S23 Ultra is a QHD Plus display with a similar refresh rate, but a 1700 nits of max brightness. Now, even though the iPhone has a higher brightness, I noticed when watching videos on YouTube or Netflix, the S23 Ultra appeared brighter and sustained that brightness for a longer period of time than the 15 Pro Max. Should that be a big deal for you? I don't think so, because both phones do the job really well. However, if I had to choose one to consume content on, it will definitely be the S23 Ultra because it doesn't have that dynamic island that is very intrusive. Some may argue that you notice it less, which is true, but the S23 Ultra has a cleaner look. From just looking at these phones, they are very premium. Now, in terms of holding the 15 Pro, it feels lighter and significantly reduces hand fatigue. It is also 19 grams lighter than the S23 Ultra. The S23 Ultra is a two-handed phone. The aluminum frame and the square corners means you won't really be using your phone for a long time. It does cause some sort of discomfort after a longer period. The weight of the phone doesn't also help because this is 237 grams. That being said, which is the better phone for you? Is it the S23 Ultra or the iPhone 15 Pro? Let me know down in the comments. As usual, subscribe if you got any value from this and like this video as this goes a long way for me. Thank you guys for watching. My name again is KJOS and I'll catch you guys in the next one.